Welcome. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on cloud computing, and we'll be using Microsoft Azure as our guide. Now, I know it can seem a little complicated from the outside, but I promise, by the end of this, you'll have a solid grip on the core ideas that are powering, well, pretty much all of modern tech. So, let's dive right in. Okay, let's kick things off with a pretty big question. What if, and just think about this for a second, what if you could build out everything your business needs, servers, storage, networks, the whole shebang, without ever buying a single piece of physical hardware? That question, right there, is the revolutionary idea at the heart of the cloud. So here's our game plan for today. We're going to start with the big financial shift that the cloud created. Then we'll explore the different ways you can build your cloud. After that, we'll look at the massive global machine that is Azure's infrastructure, see how to keep all your stuff organized, and finally, wrap up with the promises Azure makes to its users.
First up, let's talk about the money. Because, the most fundamental change the cloud introduced isn't just about technology, it's about how you pay for it.
The cloud's biggest disruption? It's financial. It completely flips the script, moving businesses away from what's called capital expenditure, or CapEx. That's the old way of buying tons of expensive hardware up front, and into operating expenditure, or OpEx. Instead of owning, you're basically renting compute power just like you'd pay for electricity. It's a pay-as-you-go model, and it gives companies an incredible amount of financial flexibility. And this new financial model unlocks one of the cloud's genuine superpowers: elasticity. Just imagine a retail website on Black Friday. In the old days, you'd have to buy enough servers to handle that massive one-day peak, and then they just sit there mostly idle for the rest of the year. With elasticity, the cloud just automatically scales up when you're busy and then scales right back down when you're not. You only pay for the power you're actually using right when you use it. Okay, so the financial model makes sense. The next logical question is, well, which type of cloud is right for me? Because it's not a one-size-fits-all deal. It's all about picking the right blueprint for your project. The two main flavors are public and private. Think of the public cloud, like Microsoft Azure, as a massive shared apartment building. You don't own the building, you just rent an apartment. It's super cost-effective, and the landlord, in this case Microsoft, handles all the maintenance. A private cloud, on the other hand, is like owning your own house. It's all yours, you have total control, but you're also the one responsible for buying it and fixing the roof when it leaks. But what if you want a little of both? That's where the hybrid cloud comes into play. It connects your private on-premise setup to the public cloud. This way, you can keep your most sensitive data in your own house, but still take advantage of the massive power and services of the public apartment building for other things. It really is the best of both worlds. Now, beyond where your cloud lives, you also choose your level of control. First up is infrastructure as a service, or IaaS. The best way to think about this is like leasing a plot of land. The provider gives you the fundamental building blocks, the servers, the storage, the networking, but it's up to you to install the operating system and all your software. This gives you the most flexibility and control. Next, we have Platform as a Service, or PaaS. Now, if IaaS was just leasing the land, PaaS is like renting a fully equipped workshop. The provider handles the infrastructure and the operating system. You just show up with your code and your data and start building your application. This really cuts down on all the administrative headaches. And finally, we have the simplest model, software as a service, or SaaS. You're not building anything here, you're just using the finished product. This is like moving into a fully furnished apartment where all the utilities are included. You just walk in and start living. Microsoft Office 365 is the perfect example. You just log in and get to work. So we've covered the what and the how. But where does all this cloud stuff actually exist? Let's take a peek behind the curtain at the incredible physical infrastructure that powers Azure across the entire globe. The entire Azure world is organized into what are called regions. A region is simply a specific geographical area on the map, like West US or North Europe. That is a bunch of data centers. When you create a service, you pick which region to put it in. This is awesome for keeping your data and applications physically close to your users, which makes everything faster. Now, inside a single region, this is where it gets really clever. We have availability zones. I want you to picture 3 totally separate buildings, maybe on the same city block. Each one has its own independent power supply, its own cooling systems, and its own network connection. They are completely isolated from each other. So if something bad happens to one building, like a power outage, the other 2 are totally unaffected and just keep on running your application without a hitch. And what's the payoff for building your app across those separate zones? You get this:
99.99% uptime. That's not just a goal, that's a promise, backed by a formal contract called a service level agreement. That is some serious reliability. Okay, so we've got this massive, super resilient global foundation. Now, how in the world do we actually organize and manage all the things we build on top of it? Let's talk about the digital blueprint.
In Azure, everything you create has to live inside something called a resource group. It's really just a logical folder or a digital filing cabinet. So if you're building a website, you'd probably put your web server, your database, and your storage all into one single resource group. This makes it incredibly easy to manage them all together, see how much that one project is costing you, or even just delete the whole thing at once when you're done.
A filing cabinet is great for staying organized, sure, but it doesn't really stop someone from putting the wrong kind of file in the wrong folder. So how do you make sure everyone is following the company rules across your entire cloud setup?
The answer is Azure Policy. This is your digital rulebook. For example, maybe your company has a rule that all data must stay within Europe for compliance reasons. You can create a policy that says, no resources can be created outside of European regions. Then, if someone on your team tries to create a server in the US, Azure Policy will just block it. It's absolutely essential for governance. All right, we're in the home stretch. For our final section, let's talk about the promises Azure makes about its services, and just as important, how you can manage your spending so there are no surprises.
Right, we mentioned SLAs earlier. A service-level agreement isn't just marketing fluff. It's a formal, financially backed contract from Microsoft. It's their commitment to you that a service will be up and running. If they fail to meet that promise, you actually get a discount on your bill in the form of service credits. And this table here shows you exactly how your design choices impact that guarantee. If you run just a single virtual machine, you get a 99.9% SLA. Not bad. But if you group multiple VMs together in what's called an availability set, that jumps to 99.95%. And if you go all in and deploy them across those availability zones we talked about, you hit that incredible 99.99%. The takeaway is simple. More redundancy equals a stronger guarantee. And finally, let's talk cost. Remember, it's all pay as you go. Here's a huge tip. If you stop a virtual machine and it's in a deallocated state, you stop paying for the expensive compute costs. That can save you a ton. Also, keep in mind that data coming into Azure is usually free, but you're charged for data going out. And hey, if you know you're going to need a service for a long time, you can use something called reservations to commit for 1 or 3 years and get a massive discount. So there you have it. From the financial models and the global infrastructure, all the way to ironclad guarantees and cost controls, we've covered the fundamental building blocks of the cloud. The tools are ready, the rules are set, and the possibilities are pretty much endless. The only real question left is, what problem will you solve first?